What's going on, fellas? Drama 22. We're going to do a little bit of a summertime install, kind of to get ready for NCAA this way. And there's some key concepts I want to make sure that if anybody who wants to follow how I'm running the defense, you want to learn from me from a coaching perspective. There's a couple things that we want to make sure we talk about, really from the front and the coverage. And we're going to base our coverage and our front system to be really adaptable. That's what today's football is. Okay. However you build it from a 4-3 structure, a 3-4 structure, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start with the 4-3 structure because I feel like we're going to be able to recruit guys in the game, just like in real life, in order to basically take safeties and turn them into linebackers, turn slow linebackers into defensive ends, and kind of get the most of our personnel that way. We may not be getting always the blue chippers, and even if we do get the blue chippers, we'll be fine. Okay. So let's just talk about some concepts that I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Anytime we teach football, guys, we're always going to start with our core and work our way out. The number system is pretty simple. I'm just going to put circles up here for now. Then later on, I'm going to end up putting actual positions, how I call them. Okay. But really, it's always a counting system from the outside in. 1, 2 from the outside. 1, 2 from the outside. Those are the eligible wide receivers or receivers, as we will call them. And there's usually a running back. So the running back would always be number 3, in this case, in a 2-by-2 formation. So if you ever hear me say 2-by-2, okay, this is pretty much what we get to. Now, some people will kind of make this a little bit more unique and say 2-by-2 spread because of what reason? Well, number 2 is detached from the core. Okay, so anytime this wide receiver is not aligned close to the offensive line, some people might say, "Oh, that's a 2-by-2 spread." Okay, but in general, it's in the 2-by-2 family. Now, in today's football, you're going to get 2-by-2 sets, but we're going to talk about a tight end that a lot of people are using in the college game and in the pro game, but they're using more with a wide tight end off the ball. Okay. So usually old school tight ends on the line of scrimmage all the time. Okay. And that's pretty much just it helps out with the blocking scheme. Okay. But now teams have gone to having this tight end be almost playing like an old school H back where he's off the ball, kind of like a wing position. Okay. I'm going to start putting letters up here now. I'm going to call the S, the Z receiver usually is a receiver that's always to the tight end side. Okay. I can call this guy an F or an S. I'm going to call him an F for now. All right. That's your slot receiver. Okay. And over here we have the X receiver. That's the backside receiver that's on the ball. Okay. For the most part, usually always away from the tight end. Okay. So we have our quarterback, right? We're going to play from the gun, and then we're going to take our halfback. Right now, I'm just going to use the word H for our halfback, and he can be on either side of the quarterback. We know that. So in general, guys, this is a 2-by-2 set, okay? But the off position with the tight end. And you're going to see a lot of this, okay? So Y off is what you're going to call that. When I was coaching years ago, this would be a tell for the defense that this Y was probably not going to do this, okay, and go down the field vertical. So what we would do is we would actually treat this almost similar to if the Y was a running back, okay, and they lined them up in the backfield, 2 backs in the backfield, okay, and if that happens, usually from a defensive standpoint, you're going to get a lot of 7-man protection, right? Because you have your 2 guys blocking, right? You got your own line protecting, whatever way they're protecting. So you have 7 players in the middle to protect. And a lot of times you're going to get your deeper concepts, right? You're going to get your good old scissors type of concept with the backside dig, okay? And these guys would serve as checkdowns, right? So you guys would see a lot of that. And a lot of times this would be a play action play on first down. If it was used on third down, it would be more of just a max up protection look. And because of that, from a defensive standpoint, we would play more 2-man, right? We would play cover 2. We would try to get 2 high safeties back here to try to cover some of these deep shot routes, okay? But what I've seen so far, and what I know and I understand, is that teams have kind of gotten away from that. I kind of really started with the Patriots, in my opinion. They actually used to line up a lot because they knew that defenses would like have tells, and they would actually change their coverage depending on where the tight end was aligned. But having this tight end aligned like this, okay, really was interesting. So now you're going to get teams who are going to line up like this, and they are going to use them for vertical route concepts. Okay, you're going to see this type of stuff. So now we don't know from a defensive standpoint, so we got to treat this like 2x2. But this is really the base way that you're going to get your 2x2 sets. And then from an offensive standpoint, now they can also treat this guy like a chipper and just do it from here. Okay. And they can still get to their, what I would call a 2x1. So 2x1 is there's one receiver weak over here. Okay. Counting from the outside in, this is one, this is two. All right. So if I said that this is a 2x1 set, I'm saying that this tight end is kind of acting like a running back. And then when I say 2x1, again, I'm always talking about the eligible receivers that we consider as vertical threats. Usually when guys are in the backfield, they're not vertical threats, right? If they do run vertical, we have answers for it in our defense. But usually the guys that are on the line of scrimmage or just slightly off the line of scrimmage, and they're usually spread out, right? They could be obviously here as a tight end. These are vertical threats, real vertical threats, okay? So that's why we say 2x1, right? So there's really only three vertical threats on this play, and they are the receivers that are on the line of scrimmage in this situation, okay? So this would be a 2x1 formation. So just going back to teaching, we're going to have an answer for this Y offset. And is it really truly 2x2? Are they running 2x1 routes? Are they doing both? Okay, so we need to know that. All right, so that's just the beginning. I just wanted to show that. Now, if we kind of go back and just talk about 3x1, because I feel like that's pretty much in the Madden world, you're going to get a lot of 3x1 people. Why? Because well, 3x1 really makes the defense have to declare what they're going to do. Okay, so traditional 3x1, all right, we just have the tight end in line. Right? We have our three receivers over here to this side, okay? And we have our running back usually weak, okay? So we want to count the numbers. We got one, okay? He counts as two. We're going to count to this side, one, two, three, okay? So we have two eligibles we got to worry about to the left. We got three eligibles we have to worry about to the right. But the formation-wise, we're going to call this 3x1 because we have three receivers to the right that are vertical threats, and we have one receiver to the left that's a vertical threat. All right, so this is a 3x1 formation. What happens here is from a coverage standpoint, whatever coverage you want to play, there's obviously more receivers to one side that can go deep. So you need to probably do something where you're going to be kicking your coverage this way. All right. Now, a lot of people talk about this, and I think it's a really good thing to talk about. You know, when you play single high defense or two high defense, but really two high defense is where most of the college game is, and I think that's where we're going to start. But you want to talk about how many players are aligned over the the guys that can go deep, okay? Or really just actually how many players are aligned over the eligible threats to one side, okay? So just from a defensive standpoint, we're just going to start with a nice quarter shell. Our corners will be at about 7 yards outside of number one to start. Okay, let me make this actually from the safety standpoint. I'm not going to give them names right now. We can kind of do that later, guys. There's going to be two safeties right now. Okay, we're going to have a star, right, or a Sam, or a nickel. Okay, and we're going to have our linebacker set here. Okay, because we're going to go with a four-man pass rush, which I know I didn't start with the front. That's like a no-no not to start with the front, but I just wanted to kind of get you guys going from back to front because I feel like that's just the best way to learn it when you're trying to play quickly and you're trying to get answers and you want to know what's going on. Okay, but in general, we have one, two, okay, three, just naturally set up just by alignment defenders to cover one, two. All right. So a lot of times people use words like triangle or, box or things like that. But really, 3/2 is a popular term you're going to hear a lot, right? 3/2 is kind of a good way that we should be able to take these three players, okay, and work out some sort of defense where we can stop these two players, especially if they want to go deep or if they want to go short, okay? And that requires us to have guys that can either probably play deep, right? Two guys deep, or we can have two guys short, whatever it might be. Okay, but we can figure it out and we can change our coverage accordingly. If you look over here, we have one, two, three, four players, right? To take care of one, two, three. So that's 4/3. So this is the essential of what a two high shell defense would look like. And if we were to play coverages like cover two, cover four, cover 6, cover 8, right? Cover 9 as we get later on, cover 8 and cover 9. A lot of people have the same thing. We have answers to take away short route game, deep game, depending on the route combinations. And this is pretty much what you want to end up doing. You want to end up having a nice umbrella cover 4 style defense, and it really counts on where these safeties are to start. Okay. And then from there, we can also jump into some single high defenses with the cover 3 family by rotating one of the safeties. These corners, doesn't matter if they're playing press, it doesn't matter if they're playing off at 8 yards, press at 1 yard, or kind of a cloud coverage at 5 yards. Most offenses aren't going to tie into that unless you have a really easy tell. Okay. I always believed that putting your corners in a press to 5 yard position is a lot better. It puts more stress on, especially to the backside on the quarterback to know what's going on. Because what? We can play man, we can play cover 2, we can pretend to play man and fall off and play cover 2, we can bail, and we can play all of our deeper coverages as well. It kind of makes the quarterback have to read everything post snap. And that corner, if you have a really good corner, and in the college game, we want to make sure our corner is usually to the X receiver or to the boundary. We will do that too. But we want to make sure we can almost just eliminate this guy with the corner. Okay. But this shell is important for us to make sure that we can always, at the end of the day, be able to play 3/2 weak versus 3x1, 4/2, 4/3 strong versus the 3 receiver side. Okay. And then we can get into our coverages from there. So our coverages that we get into is really up to however you want to play football, what you like, what you're trying to stop, who you're trying to stop, and it really, to me, always starts with playing quarters coverage. It's probably the base way of understanding. Once you understand how to play quarters coverage, you can really do a whole lot. And you can start mixing in even some of the single high principles. But really, the man principles is what you can start mixing in, okay? Quarters coverage is basically quarter, 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 quarter across the board, but we're playing match man principles where we are reading receivers' routes and we are playing them accordingly. The other thing about playing quarters coverage is it allows you to get safety into the run fits for sure to one side of the field, depending on the formation. Okay. All right. So the next thing would be how we're going to get aligned. Let's just put a wide tight end. Doesn't matter right now necessarily the whole formation. Like we'll go 2x2 actually. Let's go 2x2. All right. And then we have our defensive line and our linebackers. So what I talked about with the secondary and the way those guys work in the nickel or the star, we can play any coverage we want in the system that we want to get to, and you don't want to put too much on your guys. You want to maybe give them 2 or 3, basically 3 different ways to play. Okay, but up front we're going to play a simple 4 down system, but we can move around and we can get to some odd looks later on. But we're going to play an even look. Okay, even defense in football usually means that there are 4 down linemen, okay, and nobody is covering the center. Okay, none of the defensive linemen are on the center's body. Okay, so we will get our 4 defensive linemen to be on the bodies of the 4 down linemen or tight end. Okay, I'm gonna make that a little bigger actually. Apologize. All right, so okay, so our defensive ends, edge players, best players possibly on our team, impact players. Hopefully they can pass rush. The open end guys always consider the defensive end that's going to be to the side where there's no tight end. Okay. Most of the time you play right and left, he's going to be on the left hand side. That's fine. You get to stay there the whole time. All right. He's going to be outside shade of the tackle. So we call that a 5 technique. Our opposite end on the other side, the right end, in this defense. Okay, so I'm going to go over what the big nickel over G would be, or the base defense in the college game. We're going to take this guy and we're going to put him, he is going to align automatically in a 7 technique, or just basically in this gap, but inside the tight end. Okay, Now, in most traditional wide or nine defenses, right, they would put this defensive end on the outside, or even in 3-4 defenses, there'd be an edge player off the outside. What happens is the C gap becomes a problem, and you're going to have to fit it with a linebacker or safety. Okay. What happens here in this defense is we actually get really good coverage here, or just we stop this gap. We don't. That's going to help us when it comes to our run fits with our safeties, especially. We don't have to really worry about a C gap. Okay. All right. So we got ourselves two C gap players. Okay. Now the interior guys are the guys that kind of make this thing kind of run, in my opinion. All right. And really, it's going to make the offensive line. It's going to make the interior of the offensive line have to block them differently. The base way of playing any coverage or any front, all right, would just be an over front necessarily, or a G front over G. Over G means our two tackles here, okay? They're going to leverage themselves to wherever the tight end is. So the linebacker would make a call, like, I don't want to say ripple is. I know a lot of people use that, but a right call, just to say, hey, the linebacker, the tight end's to the right. That's going to put this guy here in a three technique, okay? Outside shade of the guard. So the tackle to that side will play outside shade of the guard, all right? And he has B gap. The opposite tackle will play inside shade of the guard away from the tight end, okay? And he has B gap as well. I'm sorry, he has A gap. My fault. He has A gap, okay? Now, this is the G. This is what people would call the G, okay? Because a lot of times in an over front, a lot of times you would get this tackle actually playing off the inside edge of off the shade of the he would be shading here or nose, right? Off of the center, okay? Or just playing in the gap. That would be more of a traditional over, okay? Or under front, all right? That's not necessarily even spacing, okay? It's reduction space. But here we're getting this little 2-eye. Now, over the years, I'm not a front guy, I'm not going to lie. I'm more of a back end guy. But I know for a fact, it doesn't matter. I coach in 3-4 or 4-3. Anytime you put a player off the inside edge of the offensive lineman, it could be a 2-eye or it could be a 4-eye inside edge of the tackle. It creates problems in the blocks, right? It's almost, I've seen guys not get blocked, okay? I've seen guys just come free, and I don't understand exactly why that happens. Offensive guys could just leave some comments and let me know, but that's just basically what I've seen a lot of, okay? Now, there are some other fronts that we can actually change. We can make this some calls, right? And the Patterson defense, they have a name for it. I forget exactly what it is, but they can set the front to the to the halfback. Okay, let me give it this. Sorry, guys, I'm a big believer in redrawing and drawing and making it clean. So I don't know what. That's just how I do it. I think it gives it time to process too. You know what I mean? Let you guys soak it up a little bit. Redraw these bad boys. But if the back is over here to this side, right? This all really kind of started with the gun uh, offensive schemes where we have RPOs and things of that nature, QB run game, right? We can take it now and put our three technique to the back, okay? And a lot of times teams, what it kind of does is force, for the most part, generally, a QB to give the ball all the time. Okay. Um, People want to, you know, read the defensive end, and usually with your front structure, this defensive end would be your edge player. Okay. He would be your contain player. So with our Mike, we're just going to line him up in the gaps for now. Let me change that up a little bit. Will, away from the tight end in this case. Right now, if the ball's run inside, okay, we're just running regular inside zone, right? So we're just going to double up. These guys are double team. They work out towards whoever's out there. We get a double team up to the mic. All right, this mic has a gap, okay? And then this backside, all right, this is the guy we're going to end up reading at the defensive end. So most of the time in your structure of your defense, you're going to tell your defensive end to sit there and play the quarterback, and that's always going to be a give read, right? So from that standpoint, we're working up there. This is kind of forcing a give read to the for the offense compared to if we were in a front where it was the other way around. So we'll do the exact same deal. Our three technique is here. Okay, so we'll work double team here out to the nickel, whoever it is, right? Whoever safety. There's always going to be some support player. If it's quarters, the safety would be here. If it's cover three, the safety would come down. Whatever it might be, the rotation. There's always going to be a player here that's going to have to come down to the side of the field. All right. Then we'll work on double team here. Okay. And again, a lot of teams like to run the inside zone to the B gap, but sometimes the three technique is fine. Right. Here, fall back in there. And then over here, we get a double team, right, up to this will. A lot of times, teams, when this situation happens from a defensive standpoint, you're going to tell this will because he's the open side. Hey, we know that right now this B gap is technically the backers, but they get up and they get up the field so far that this guy needs to close down space. And when that happens, it's easier for this. Okay. It's easier for the QB to keep the ball. Compared to if there was a three technique on the other side, there isn't much space to be closed down immediately. So the defensive end usually feathers. Also, another thing is this: a lot of teams that come out, I don't want to call it an underlook, but it really becomes that. So, right, I'm just kind of drawing this a little bit sloppy here, guys, just to get it in. But technically, the three techniques to this side, a lot of teams that do this in general stunt and blitz a lot. Okay. So a lot of times you're going to get like America's Blitz, right? Now you're going to get your star or nickel or whatever Sam coming off the edge, right? You're going to get this, right? This. And he's kind of a drop player, right? And zone. So when that happens, again, he's the contained player. So automatically he's going to be a softer player, which is going to be harder for teams to run the good old zone read quarterback keep. It's going to be pretty much what? A give call, right? If they're reading that guy. And then you're running right into a blitz. And then also, a lot of teams from when I was coaching in college back in the aughts would always take the backside. They would play games back here. They would do stuff like this. They would take especially when the front is over here like this, with this will, they would do exchanges. I'm not sure if people are still doing that as much, but they would do stuff where this will, instead of having him be the A gap player necessarily, right? He would stay in B and he would crash down hard, which would do what? Give a read call. But basically, what he's trying to do is get to that A gap, and they would take the will linebacker and have him play the quarterback and be sitting right there for him. So they just basically exchanged this gap and this gap with these two players. And that is something that you can do because you got the three technique here, holding up, being strong against that initial double team, and you can just kind of get away with potentially almost like a blitz of the player, crossing and getting to the back. So there's a lot of stuff that a defense can do when you put the three technique in that position. In that case, that's to the back, but it also could be about playing away from the tight end. So that underlook or the tight end or having the free technique to the backside to the side of the back causes issues. So some people actually like to play that as their base defense, and then they work out they work out the issues to the front side on their own. All right, so that's that. But we want to be able to do both. We want to be able to be in our traditional three technique to the tight end or three technique to the back. We want to be able to do both. So we got to have a separation there. All right. So you're going to hear me talk about that. Another thing that I've seen and I've done in Madden by accident, to be honest with you, is coming out in the wide defense, right? I know this isn't about the wide and getting to really five techniques by squeezing the defensive line. All right. Um, Squeezing them together, right? Getting them out of their wide nines and getting these guys to play head up twos. So it becomes like a 5-2-2-5 alignment. And again, this is almost like what I was saying about playing those two eyes. It causes a lot of just like confusion, right? And these two guys end up taking these three guys, right? And then whatever defense you're in, doesn't matter. We just have two backers in the box. I'll just put the letter B's in there, okay? we now have, we can pretty much win in this situation because we have really, I know there's no tight end there. Okay, but even if there was, still, you have two over one on this side, two over one on that side. How are they going to end up blocking you in run game? You know what I mean? So if they had the tight end to this side off the ball, they run this way, cool, cool, cool. This guy, this guy's gonna have to work up to either get this guy or just sit here. And usually he's gonna be wrong. If he works up to get the backer, a lot of times in that defense, you see the defensive end come over and make a play. If he stays here, then now you just got a free linebacker running. Okay, and it's the same thing if you did that out of a 3-4-4-3 set. If it was a two backs in the backfield personnel, but just wanted to show you that. So the coverage, really the fronts we're going to have, okay? And from a standpoint of how we're going to call it, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to call it. I think I'm going to try to keep it in just the Madden terminology or in just basic terminology instead of kind of getting into how people call it. But the over G is the main front, okay? So we're going to have to the tight end side, let's say the tight end to the left, we're going to have a seven, we're going to have a three, right? We're going to have a 2I or G. You can just call that a G if you want. And then we're going to have a five, nice heavy tight five, okay? Over G. And then how we're going to set it, right? So we could just say we're going to set it to the tight end, okay? Right? We could do that. So we can either do to the tight end, away from the tight end, okay? People come up with names for this stuff. I'm just keeping it real simple. Or we can look at it from the halfback, right? To the halfback or away from the halfback. This is going to matter when we get into like 10 personnel, when they spread you out and they go two by two and there's no tight end, really. You're going to have to probably set it to the halfback or to the field, okay? And let me go back to that too. I apologize. Since we're playing NCAA, right, we got to go field, right? So to or away. Because if a team has a tendency to run the ball into the boundary or into the field, you may want to manipulate that with the front. Okay, so the over G would be the base front, and this is how we're going to work it. Then later on, I think I will look into when we get into Madden, especially the NFL stuff, the wide nine stuff. Okay, but it's going to be more of that squeeze. So we're going to play that 5-2-2-5 against the same type of offenses. So it's not truly a wide nine. I can probably even get rid of it. But in the Madden world, that's what we got to get it set up with. Okay. So you need to know that from a front standpoint. Um, Really, I'm not going to speak on the linebackers too much because I got to look at how the game plays. But in general, guys, because we are in a nice, we are basically like in a nickel front, but we only have six guys in the box all the time. Our two linebackers, okay, Mike and a Will, doesn't matter really, how you want to say it, but the Mike usually travels to the tight end side, okay? We're going to just always have an A gap, okay, on either side, B gap on either side. And we just have to know, and it's easy because usually you can just look at the guy in front of you. You're either going to have to play A gap or B gap when the ball comes to you, A gap or B gap when the ball comes to you. And that's just basically the base way of setting up, depending on what's happening with the front. So our Mike and our Will always usually are A gap, B gap players, okay? There are some exceptions when teams want to go quads, okay, and they want to go 4-by-1. Then one of your safeties or your nickel or your star is going to have to become an A or B gap player. But in general, most of the football we're going to get, 80% of it, is going to be pretty easy. So again, let's just take a look at, let's get into some more 3-by-1 families since I think that's a lot of people love this stuff, right? I'll just do it regular 3-by-1. So again, three receivers to the right, one receiver to the left, 3-by-1. These are the eligible guys to go out. We count the number system. We got one, two, right? We got one, two, three here. All right, so we're set. So from a front standpoint, let's just say we want to put the front to the back. Okay, so we want, whatever call we're going to use, we're going to set the front to the back. Come up with the calls later, but we just want to get the theory down. We're going to play our big nickel over G. All right, so we got our star out here. Let's just put our quarters in press for now. Let's just kind of mix it up a little bit. I'm going to call this guy a weak safety. I'm going to call this guy a free safety. Weak safety usually aligns away from the nickel. Free safety travels to the side of the nickel, the passing strength, okay? So in general, and I didn't talk about that, guys, because we could change up our calls. We'll talk about that with coverage, but I'm pretty much getting the secondary set according to formation right now. So you can also set your coverage according to formation, according to field. But right now we're just going to do formation. So as you can see, the gaps, right? C gap, B gap, A gap, C gap, right? Technically, this is your D gap player. So what are the gaps that are open, right? A, B. All right. So our linebackers, you don't have to line them up directly in the gaps. Again, linebacker coaches do it different. It depends on your coverage responsibility. You may have to play a little wider. Okay. So just for now, I'm just going to put them over the guards. Okay. So I'm just going to put them in just head up to 20 techniques. So what we do is we just call it, if he was head up as an actual defensive lineman, he would be a two. Just head up on the guard. We just put a zero behind the number and call it 20. Okay. If he was and a 30 technique, he would be considered outside shade the guard, about 4 or 5 yards off the ball. However you want to teach that. Some people have him play a little closer, okay? But in general, though, we have to know our front fits, okay? And depending on the coverage scheme that you're playing with, some teams will have it so that there would be in a too high shell. You won't necessarily play one back, one gap, even though this is one back, one gap. But if the ball was to come this way, okay, this linebacker would take the B. This one would take the A. Okay. Now, in this case here, there's really no other chance for the ball to go the other way because of the way the back is set up, right? Unless it's a running quarterback play, all right? So let's just go under center, which you hardly ever see anymore, right? But if we were to get a run play going to the left, it would be now this linebacker here, all right? Will, all right? He would have to fit the A. And this linebacker here, right? He would take the B. Now, you don't have to just run up in the gaps. That's something that some people will teach, right? So if this guy steps this way, a lot of coaches will teach a technique just called, like, I forgot exactly what they call it, stack fallback. Okay. But they would basically start working in the direction of where the back is. Okay. But they would stack the defensive lineman that's in front of them. So whatever the player that has his hand down in the dirt, they would start to shuffle this way. Okay. And get stacked behind him. Okay, and what that does is here in this play right here, we're going to have, depending on how they're going to block this play, somebody's going to have to work up to the mic. Okay, most of the time it's going to be this backside tackle. All right, so he will stay on that for a little bit longer. He works here. If this ball does decide to cut back, then we can have him cut back into that gap. Some people would have plays where the quarterback opens up and turns, and this guy takes a step, and it's like called a wind back play, and the play is actually being blocked this way. So the offensive linemen are actually stepping this way, and they're trying to get you to step that way. So you just have to be careful of that. So you might take one step, but you need to get back to your B gap if the ball cuts back. Basically, if the ball doesn't clear the line of scrimmage, you really can't be running into an opposite gap when you're playing the system. Okay, you need to respect your gap. Okay, so you have to play with a little bit of tempo. If you're playing with a safety down the box to help you right away, then you can play with more tempo. Okay, so that's just something to think about. All right, so we've covered the linebacker splits. Now, from a pass game standpoint, let's get back to two by two. Okay, and then just the basic idea of what we want to do with the coverage. In general, we want to stop four verticals and stop the run. That's always the ideal of what most people want to do in football. They want to run the ball. If they can do that, they would do it all day. And then if you give them a shell like cover three or even cover two, they will take advantage of you and try to throw the ball on verticals. Okay, even man-to-man coverage. Okay, so quarters coverage gives us this ability to play. Really, the word I like to use, and I got it from match quarters, is usually like cap the verticals, stay on top of the verticals, match the verticals deep. Right. So usually in football, there's a 10-yard um, mark that most people use, and I use it sometimes too. Okay. But if this player goes beyond 10 yards, all right, so he outside releases, okay, he goes straight down the field. Get my leg out of there. All right. That's called a vertical. It's in the family of verticals, okay, meaning that anything over 10 yards is considered in the group family called verticals. He can stop and run a comeback, okay, and we're going to call it a comeback, but it's still in that vertical family. Okay, he can run a dig, right, at about 18, 15 yards or whatever. It's still in the vertical family, but it's called the dig. Okay, and he can run a post. It's called the post when we talk about it on the sideline, but it's in the family of verticals. And all that means is basically this player, whoever is on top of that player in a quarter system, most people are going to teach it that you are going to man match that guy once he goes past 10 yards. So once he becomes a vertical player, you man match him. So that's why you hear me use that term a lot. Doesn't mean four verticals. It does mean four verticals, but it doesn't always mean that. It could be any route over 10 yards. Okay. So a lot of times our corners are going to be playing to start in the beginning of camp. We're going to play them at 6, 7, 8 yards. Okay. Whatever they're comfortable with. And that all depends on how quickly they can turn their hips and run. That's more of a technique thing. We're talking scheme right now. And he's going to be keen 1 to 2. Okay. So in general, if one is his first guy, okay, and then he has eyes on two if one disappears. All right. In general, if we're playing quarters coverage, and that's what we're starting with right now, cover four, okay, he's going to key 1 to 2. So if number one runs anything vertical, we already talked about it, right? He's going to take it. If number one was to run anything out, okay, like a quick out of 5 yards, okay, he's going to take it as well. All right. And then if he runs anything shallow across the field to the inside, he's going to then let that go. So the term that we use is called mod technique. Okay. So it means you have man on your guy if he goes outside or deep. Okay. So that's pretty much what that means. It's always been conversation about how do you play slants. This is going to tie into him again to cover three as well. But most of the time, slant routes are let go by the corners. Now, that could change. I think that's something that personally, I like my corners playing press, and we would take care of slants. Okay. So let me just go back to that before I even talk about number two. So that's mod playing off, right? The coverage is so flexible and so good that you can put your corners playing press. And this is how it's taught in Madden that if you pressure corners against a 2-by-2 formation, these guys are basically going to play man to man. I mean, they are going to play man to man, not basically, they are. And in that terminology, right, people call that Meg, okay, man everywhere he goes. So now if you get that quick shallow route, underneath route, he's going to take it. And then the slant game is also being taken care of as well. There's no question there. So it's basically man, and basically how you would look at this from if you were playing safety or linebacker, there is no number one. It's basically just, hey, he's got him. So now we can focus on just number two and number three. All right. All right. Let's go back to going back to playing mod technique in quarters. The only other route I didn't mention, I apologize, was the quick hitch. And this is more of a game plan thing. I think people, certain people know this route, or let's just say it's a bubble, right? Or he just steps back. That's another route where it's not outside, it's not deep. Okay. So that's going to be an example where the corner now is going to get his eyes to number two. Okay. He's going to sink back into his quarters alignment or just his track. When I say track, it's basically wherever he's standing, all he has to do is go straight back from here. Okay. I'm going to put out here a free safety just so you can see it too. Okay. I'll talk about his alignment. I didn't go over really the alignment of the corner too much besides his depth. A lot of times you're going to play inside leverage of number one. Okay. And I'll talk about why when we start getting into the combination routes. But you're going to play slightly head up to inside leverage of number one with your corner. Okay. My rule in the NFL, and I don't know how it changes in college, but if the numbers are here, usually the number one receiver is always outside the numbers. Okay. If he's outside the numbers, we're going to align inside. Okay. If he's inside the numbers, we're going to align outside. That's just basic. That's my divided rule. Simple. You can't get more easy than that. Right. College might be different. I haven't coached in college in a while, so I might have to relearn that. But in general, that's that. So if one runs a hitch, right, we're gonna get our eyes on two. A lot of times, the big route you're gonna see is what the good old smash combination. So that's where now he's gonna stay in his quarters track, as I would call it, and just look at number two, and he's gonna play the corner route. He's gonna play the deepest. He's gonna play number two in a deep route. Okay. If number two, for whatever reason, not realistic, but let's just say he ran a dig or something, then he's just gonna stay there. Right? He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to chase that guy. So he's not running over to cover number two. He's basically just playing zone coverage at that point. All right. Okay. Now let's get into the safety. And if there's any other things I missed, I'll probably figure it out later. I'll come back to it. But let's get to the safety now. All right. So our corner, let's just put them 1 by 7. So one would be 1 yard inside, 7 yards deep. Okay. Our safety. Our safety here in this situation, a lot of people, because you will have to potentially do what? Match up a vertical route, right? You don't want to be too far inside. You don't want to be playing closer to the box and have to go come running out. So in general, I would tell my safeties to play at about 12 yards deep, 2 yards inside of number two. Okay, one, two. That allows them to be able to read two, all right, work with them, stay inside leverage, and be able to turn and run and play man to man coverage, okay, if he goes down the field on a deep route. So the safeties are reading 2-1. So our free safeties here, he's reading 2-1. All right. If two goes vertical, okay, he takes him. This is different than my technique. If two goes out, he is not taking him. So if he goes out under 10 yards, he's not taking him. Okay. This is where we're going to get involved with our star. All right. So he's looking for two vertical. If there's no two vertical, he's now not responsible for that number two. He's going to get his eyes to one. But at the same time, I'm not a huge believer in getting your eyes to one. That's just my own personal thing there. I don't think he should become like an old school robber player where he needs to help out on the curl and go running on the curl. I want my corner to still play that. He's playing that with good, almost match man technique. I want the but see, I want the safety to actually read the quarterback. We won't go into too much of how I want to teach it because that can get into a conversation for a long time. But basically, he becomes a free player. That's how I used to say it. But that means he could just stay back on his quarters track, right, and read the quarterback and look to help out. He can look to help out weak, right? He can look to help out strong, right? He can look to help out what in the run game, because number two running a flat like that is cool, but a lot of times you're going to get this type of stuff too. You're going to get bubbles, right? So if his eyes are in the backfield, he can see what's going on with if the ball was thrown or not. Then he can go help and assist on a bubble play too, right? Okay, so it's pretty simple for the safety there, right? Now it's going to get harder later on once we get into some more combination routes and things like that. But let's get into just a combination route, like I just said, scissors combination, right? So we get a post, okay? We get a corner. This is one thing you got to figure out. And this is what I always do when I turn on Madden is, how the guy's playing it. With this much spacing, this is a lot of space on the board. This is also a lot of space on the field, okay? So if I did this, let's just say they did this route where that's the numbers, and this guy is like 5 yards outside the numbers, he's 5 yards inside the numbers, and they try to run this combination. Or it could be a combination where it's just a normal sail route, right? And we're not running um, a scissors combination, a post in a corner. We're just running a go in a corner, okay? Everybody's going to lock on their guys, right? So you drill this in practice, right? He's man here. He has to play that route right there. How does he turn his hips? How does he go? Is he going to be able to play that route? Because technically he's out leveraged, right? So that's something you got to think about. But once we get into more formations, let's just say these are the numbers, right? And they get in tight, right? All of a sudden you see the guys are stacked like this. He's on the top of the numbers, he's on the bottom of the numbers, or opposite, whatever. What I would call a stack. Okay, so when you get a stack, now what? How is this going to play out? And this is something I always have to look at in Madden. Are the corners and the safety, are they going to still lock on their guys once they declare down the field? So let's just say we do get this route, which is a common tell from a defensive standpoint that when you get guys that are close, a lot of times they're going to switch. So are they going to lock on in Madden, which is what they've been doing last year? Or are they going to play, pretty much play man to man technique down the field over what, 10 yards, right? Once it gets past 10? Or are they going to play a zone it technique, which is what they had in old Maddens, especially when it came to bunch formations, where now if they work down the field, we're going to end up switching. So we're going to communicate with each other, okay? Let's just do it from a stack alignment. And as they work down the field, a lot of times the corner and safety kind of like get on the same level too, or at least be both of them would be deeper so they can read it a little bit better. As he works down the field, it's almost like a banjo. So when this guy comes here, he comes here. We switch. We might even say switch, switch, switch. And then now he gets to stay in this quarters outside, and he stays in this quarters. Really, what we're doing is waiting for them to just come down the field, and once they make their move, and once they make their cut, then we'll take the guy that's coming to us. Okay, so that's an idea of playing it more of a zone match principle, zone it technique. So we're actually playing our zone to start, and then we let them make their move, and then now we decide who we're going to play after they've declared. So that's the zone match principle compared to more of a man match principle, where you take your guy and then pretty much you have him as long as he runs inside and out. All right, or outside and up. All right, so that's that. But you got to always discuss that from that standpoint, how we're going to cover deeper route concepts. Okay. All right, so let's now almost finish up here. I'm going to come back to the opposite side here and the backers too. But I didn't talk about the star. So our star, okay, or our nickel or our Sam linebacker in quarters coverage, he doesn't have any deep responsibility. He's pretty much what we would call a flat defender, okay? However people want to call it. In most defenses, they call it quarter flat, right? And you can actually do this different ways. I've seen people like teach this different ways. They would actually have it like in the old TCU system, have them outside leverage, right? Kind of almost be like a bracket player. But the most important thing is if two works out, you got it. Okay. And just in general, if two works out and up, you stay with them. Okay. So this player would have to stay with this route. That's just a generic rule that you need to know. If you are a flat defender in a match style defense, you always have to take out and ups. I'm saying it now because that's something that people are going to try to get you on later. When I used to coach for the Jets and we were heavy match team, covered three match and quarters match, it was always all day, every day, a lot of wheel routes on, especially on linebackers to see if they knew their rules. And the Patriots were huge with that, especially number three. Okay, and that's something that if you ever hear the Patterson defensive guys talk, we talk about swing gate deeper three. I forgot how they say it, but they always have to make sure that be careful of three running that wheel. A lot of times it would have to be an inside backer that would take it or a hook player. Okay, but just in general, guys, this guy's route is pretty easy. A lot of times in the NFL, we tell that guy to get hands on him. So like, don't just let him get free. If he's working vertically down the field, don't let him go by. Like, get hands on him, reroute him. Right? You see that in Madden a lot. Now they do a good job of that in Madden. Now, from the standpoint of a run fit standpoint, 'cause I didn't talk about run fits with the safeties over here. Pretty much these guys are secondary support players. All right. So that means that they need to just react to deep, runs that are far away from them. They need to be able to be backside chase players. And then any type of run that's coming at them, they're going to be outside leverage players. Well, the corner is going to be an outside leverage player, and the safety is going to be an inside pursuit player. But that's more of like a pursuit drill situation. So technically they have to stop the pass. They're not there to stop the run. They're there to react to the run if it gets past the line of scrimmage. But this player here is not that way. And it goes back to the philosophy of what I was saying of how do you want to get your run fits fit? You know what I mean? How do you want to stop them? And if a team is aligned like this is part of the reason why teams are going to want to now take the over G front and put it away from the tight end, okay? Or in this case, to the back. That's probably the best way to talk about it. To the back, okay? Because what gaps are open? A, B, right? And we're good to go. And then obviously we have D out here, right? That's the next open gap. Right now, this player doesn't have to worry about C, B, or A. He's technically a D gap player. So that's why some people would just put him outside. So if there's any run away from him, he doesn't have to worry about working any type of real, um, what do you call it, contain, cutback uh, responsibility. He could just take care of, as long as he's outside, as long as he doesn't have to stand outside of him, but as long as he takes care of this player. If there was a run coming this way for whatever reason, he would have to jump to outside leverage or at least be outside the ball carrier. Let's say the quarterback kept the ball. He needs to be outside the ball carrier at the end of the day. So if he wants to beat him with a quick move, he better win and make sure the ball carrier is inside leverage of him. But in general, it protects your nickel. So he doesn't have to worry about necessarily, I had this guy off the ball. He doesn't have to worry about necessarily playing in the inside run gaps. Okay. So again, going back to the front setup and having your three technique be to the away from the back. Okay. It goes back to just the issue of this double team working itself up to here, and it's going to create a little bit of a bubble right here. All right. And when that happens, that's why usually you want your DN, oops, quarterback here, to come flat. All right. If you just have him go forward and go up the field and sit there for the quarterback, a lot of teams will just go, and this ball will cut right back up in here. That's what I've seen back in the day. I got to see if that's still happening. Okay. But once you add in that quarterback run game now, so when you put your front away from the tight end or to the, I mean, away from the back, it opens up that backside cutback gap. Okay. So that's part of the reason why we just want to play more thing to the back. All right. So I didn't go over past game stuff. Let me just keep on going. And what we're going to do here, though, is talk about the star, right, and our mic and our safety. So essentially, in quarters coverage, and we're going to talk about this and some other nice things that I've learned in cover three. We really got 3 and 2, and we're covering them really with if we just cancel this guy out and just say it's okay, let's just they're not on the field because we're going to bang them up. We're going to have to work these three over these two. Okay. So I already talked about the possibilities of him working out, and that's easy. Him working up, okay, that's easy. So the hardest thing is what happens when really he goes in. A lot of times that's all depending on number three. So this nickel needs to focus on number three as well, especially when he works in. Okay. The generic rule that I learned from my guys or from my coaches, guys I work with, is if three is away, stay on two. All right. If three is to you, you can bump. So in this case, if three was to swing out this way, all right, now he would work out to his new number two, right? And this Mike player would now take this number three. And in general, you would wall that player from the mic. Wall would just mean that there's a wall here, right? And you're not going to pass him off to anybody else. He is your guy. You got him. So you don't have to necessarily stand there and hit him, obviously, and just try to put him on the ground. If you can, that's great. But honestly, what it means is you're going to match this guy across the field when he wants to shot him. Okay. So what we call that is just like a 2-3 exchange. Okay. A 2-3 read. So that's what's happening with those two underneath guys there. Let me give you another example. Let's just also say two goes vertical. So we know our safety's got him, right? So our nickel, or our star, I'm just going to call him star, okay? He's going to look for three, right? If three is working out, it's going to be a similar situation. He's going to now take that guy for the new number two, right? So let's say he ran a corner route. We got a flood combination here with our guy here. That'd be next. And he's got him to the flat. So what happens is this linebacker will still work with three. Not sure because he has no idea. He would work for some depth and some width, and he's not sure if he has this player here because he could have given him something else, right? So he's thinking, I'm going to relate to three, right? But obviously, with this type of call, I don't know if there's any call would be made. He would just push for working with. And if the ball's thrown there, you expect this guy to make the play first, and then he'll work inside out. But the Mike linebacker is still working towards three. And he's always going to work towards three if he swings out. The hardest thing you could ever get would be something like this, and you got to just talk about it, I think, from the earliest days so that you don't get your guys caught out there. If for whatever reason three decides to run a wheel or a corner, okay, your Mike linebacker is responsible for that. All right. That's three. He hasn't basically anything out, right? Unless there's some sort of um, push call or working together with this with the yeah, just working with the nickel, right? Or with the star. But if you do get this type of corner route, right, or some type of crazy wheel route, he needs to keep that. He has an outside and he has a vertical. So it's very unique. People might try to just run him on the seam route. That's his guy too. Okay. You don't know if you're going to have safety help. Now, if they run some type of combination, which most people would be smart and try to get the safety out of there, right? And then try to run this up, you got him. So you guys know this in Madden. That's always the problem. What happens when three goes vertical? And it's going to be more of a problem when three goes vertical when he's actually a tight end or a wide receiver um, in a trip set or in a quad set. But we're going to talk about it there from 2x2 so nobody gets surprised. And that's one thing that they haven't put into Madden this year or ever is covering number three vertical out of quarters coverage. Just hasn't been taken care of. Okay. That's why some people would rather play cover three because you always have a post safety in the middle of the field. You don't have to worry about it. All right. There's one last thing I would say is let's say the running back comes through the line of scrimmage, right? Blocks and then comes through and checks down late. It would be the same thing. It really depends on what number two did. If number two is gone, right? He's being matched. Then we're just gonna have to match this guy. It's working out. The Mike's gonna match him. If number two came in, right? We can get a push call or whatever. We can switch, and that's fine. All right. Now, on the opposite side, it's all the same rules. Okay. The only guy for the safety and for the nickel for the weak side corner. Okay. So we have 2x2. Everything I taught you over here is the same to over here. So most of the time, people teach the system. They will talk about, really it's two halves of the field, and we're playing quarters to either side. Everything I taught you with one and two is being read over here the same way with the weak safety and with the corner. Okay. The only difference here is that we have a will linebacker, right? And he's going to work off of number two. He's the quarter flat defender, similar to how this star player is working off of number two over here. So again, he has him on anything out, right? Including wheels, right? And that's that. If he goes vertical, technically he's a flat defender, right? And he's going to work with vision back to number three. So he's going to read 2 to 3, right? He's going to see if for whatever reason did three swing out this way, then he's going to relate to three as he would if he was a Mike linebacker. The three check down and come through here, the Mike is going to technically, I talked about this, he's going to technically work to with him because he doesn't know if the will is there. But if the will can say push, push, he can push him and leave him alone because he doesn't have any work. And the Mike doesn't have to work towards this player going towards the will. Okay. Um, that's it. I mean, that's really it. The will linebacker, he does have a little bit of a binds. He does have binds when it comes to covering the quarter flat and in the passing game and in the run game. Okay. So that's why this bind is happening all over now. So our weak side of our coverage here, we're going to end up a lot of times getting different types of calls on the weak side. So over here, we're going to play. You're going to see more. You're over here to the strong side. You're going to see more traditional quarters, right? Over here, you're going to see different types of quarters or cover twos. A lot of times people will call it palms, right? As we call it in Madden, or two read. Some people call it college. But the issue is this. Let's go back to what we had here with the run game, okay? So we have the run game set up, right? He's a B gap player, right? Mike is here. He's an A gap player, right? So if they run the ball in here, right, and this guy goes out to the flat, what's he going to do? He's a conflict player. He has to play the run, but then he also has to say, oh, wait, two's going out. So by itself, and this is an easy RPO scheme that people might try to do, or even doesn't have to be an RPO. It could just be people who run flat slant concepts over here, dragons, and that puts that guy in a bind. So a lot of times in the weak side of quarters coverage, this could be a spread set too now, right? He could be walked out. I'm going to keep it this way because this is how most people are playing football and offense right now. You can now have a read where you have Palm's corner. Okay, he probably play a little deeper, but he'll probably play about 5 yards. He's reading 2 to 1. Okay, if two goes out to the flat, he basically turns into almost like a cover two. He becomes a flat defender. Okay, and your weak safety now, okay, would actually work out and play over the top of one. So that allows, if it's a run play, for your will linebacker to fit up to stay there. versus any type of run, flash, fake, play action. We're going to cover it up with basically, almost basically locking up the backside. And that's what we're doing here. And some teams, like in the Patterson defense, man, like they wouldn't even, they can do that if they wanted to, but they can also just say lock. Okay. And this is where we're going to get to later on. If the game allows us to make adjustments quickly and it doesn't mess us up, we could take our weak safety here, corner, and just play man to man. All right. This is kind of the Michigan State defense from back in 2010s, right? Just lock it up. And then this guy works out, you just got him, right? And now this guy is not in a conflict. Um, it's going to happen too versus spread sets where teams that actually want to put like a slot receiver out there and make that guy have to make a will linebacker or have to cover him in space. Let me just kind of show you this. I'm just going to go back to the rule that I talked about. Let's say this is a really good tight end. Let's just keep it that way, okay? He's a really good athletic tight end. Um, he can move Kittle, whoever the guy in Atlanta, right? I talked about this. So when you are the will linebacker, okay, or when you're the quarter flat defender, you need to know where number three is, okay. So I talked about it when three's away, right? I didn't kind of talk about this before, but this is not realistic. But let's say three did some type of like route like that, right? Pre-snap, ran out there, got deep. Mike's gonna work this way. If this guy works a slant route, okay, you got him. So that goes back to like even RPO stuff, right? And people are throwing slants. Three's away, you got to stay on two. That's your guy. Man him up. So you got to be really athletic in order to be able to play maybe outside leverage and still kind of get back in on that. But if we also have three aligned away from you, like he is here, take a look at this. So if three's away, it could be by his movement, or it could be by his alignment. So his alignment is away automatically right from the jump. Most likely, you're not going to get that, right? That's not realistic. You're going to get him working here, here, somewhere else, or just a run. But when three's away from you, you have to stay inside this guy because the mic is working towards three. You have to stay inside. There's no option of standing out here. Okay. So this is where if a team knows that from a leverage standpoint that you have to play hard inside, okay, they're going to do things in the passing game. And a lot of teams are going to try to manipulate this. Like, let's just say they put a slot receiver there, they motion, they come out in 10, whatever it might be. I forgot how New England used to always get us in this situation. But anyway, and this is a linebacker body type too. He's just going to sit down, work inside, and then work out, right? A little option route, pivot route. And this guy is so heavy inside because he doesn't think he has any help, right? Because three's away from him, right? He just blocks or whatever. That a lot of times this route's wide open. So that's another reason why you want to play a palms coverage so you can kind of help this guy out. Okay. We've tried to help it out too. I've done this before where we try to take the weak side safety and say, I got outside leverage, right? So, he would kind of come like a bracket system. He can't come up, obviously, if you can't play quarters coverage to do that. That would be, I apologize. That'd be more of a cover seven or 57 or bracket coverage where we're going to play 2-on-1, but that's always a problem with quarters. So a lot of teams in general, they would not play quarters into the boundary a whole lot. They would actually just check into cover two. And that's where you're playing cover four to the strong side, cover two weak. So we're playing a lot of cover six because we want this guy to be able to play his run gap, do what he has to do, not have to worry about anything outside. Let the corner take care of that. So we're just pushing the problems to the outside. That's how I look at it, man. All right. So that's something to think about. That's why cover three is also a good change up. Dropping the safety down weak over there and cover three weak, playing cover three cloud. Those type of things help when people want to try to scheme you up in the passing game. Okay. All right. That was just 2x2. 3x1 is going to be a lot more specific to how you want to play 3x1. You should only probably have like two or three checks that you want to get to. They should all complement each other. But there are definitely different ways to play 3x1 where you can actually work the how you're going to play three. That's what it comes. It comes down to that problem. How are you going to play two vertical? How are you going to play three vertical? And then your ones, is that a problem? Do you have a guy on the outside that's a mismatch? Then we might have to double team him, which is going to affect the whole coverage. But if you have two lockdown corners in this defense, you're in good shape. All right. And in the college game, because of the field. So the field is so wide, right? So I just did a really bad drawing. My fault. Hold on. Like these are the hashes, right, in the college game, right? Crazy wide. I know that's really exaggerated, but so people are setting up their offenses over here, right? And you have all this space out here to throw the ball. So a lot of times what we're going to do is play all of our combination coverages over here, our four, our two, and we're going to play off with the corners, right? And we're going to drop guys. We're going to do a whole bunch of different things to stop combination routes, like we just talked about, scissors, all those things. And then over here on the backside, since there's not a lot of space, we're just going to say screw it. We're just going to man up this guy. So you want to have what we call a boundary corner who plays into the boundary, man up everybody, and then now I can grab a safety and bring him over here and do other things. So if you put your best corner in the college in that position, and people are scared to throw the ball there, we're just playing football over here now. Okay, and then we might have to worry about a back, coming out over here too. But even if teams want to try to run the ball, there's less space. So we're going to end up putting our star in the field. We're going to end up putting our fronts how we want, and manipulate kind of or try to dictate where they're going to run or what's the easiest, the hardest run for them, make them run the hardest runs. And that's it. In the NFL, everything is pretty much in the middle of the field, even though the hashes are, we talk about hashes and stuff in the NFL, but and it's like this because this is the goalpost. It pretty much matches the goalpost. You have thinner goalposts in the NFL, right? So it doesn't matter if an offense wants to start here, you start here. There's still enough space on either side, and now we just need to worry about matchups and just say, hey, I got I got that cat. My best corner, go cover that guy. I don't care if he's into the left, the right, the boundary, because there's space enough side that they can work and they can run any route they want. All right. All right. I don't know, man. Let me know what you guys think. I just want to kind of get this out there. A nice little tutorial. See what you think. Um, I'm in my basement, just trying to make this. Later on, if you guys like this, I'll buy an actual camera and make it high definition and make it a lot better and all that stuff like that. But I think it's kind of good this time of year, especially we're not playing games as much. It's good to just learn some of the technique and learn some of the stuff so that when we see it in the games on Sundays, Saturdays, make more sense. And then later on, I can actually draw up a play that happened and explain it to you on the board, and then we can watch the film. So it's not just always writing on the film. I don't know, different ways to do it. All right. So I'll tell you later, man. Peace.